Welcome to Dead Headspace. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and all other major platforms. I am your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co host, Brennan LaFaro. And today we're talking with Josh Malerman. Hi, Josh.
Hi, guys.
And how's it? Sorry, Brennan. How's it going, Brennan?
I'm good. Thank you for remembering to ask.
Now, normally we start with a base question, but I think that we're going to do a new one today. First time we're asking this with Josh is how many books can you stack on your head at one time?
Is this question coming out of nowhere, or did you talk to Michael Wilson? Or did you listen? Oh, did you listen? That podcast already run? Because if this is a total coincidence that you were asking me this, and Michael Wilson asked me this. I'm going to pretend for a moment that it is a coincidence because this is going to make me eventually do it. And I think the answer's got to be 20, right? You got to be able to stack like 20. I mean, as long as like the base one, like maybe one of those big like picture horror, like from the horror movies, like it's like this big and thin. If good base like that, come on, you can get like 20 up there.
Brendan,
I think
when
you initially answered, I think it was 10. When you talked with This Is Horror, your confidence has built over the last few weeks. I love that. It's like telling how you caught a fish.
Because I've really thought about it. That the wider the base, you could even stack them next to each other.
Now, Brendan, I wasn't gonna ask that as the first question, but Brendan, because like I asked that to Michael David Wilson. This is before I even knew that. Before you and I talked about you coming on the show, I just asked it because that was the first time I was a patron with the show, and I could like ask questions, and I said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna ask 3 weird questions," and it's Josh, so I don't know what direction he's gonna take it in. And Brennan thought it would be funny if I started off the episode by saying that, so that's why I asked that.
Awesome.
I also think it's funny that you were given that privilege, and your first thought was to immediately start abusing that privilege.
Now we know that about you.
We'll learn more about Brennan as we go along. So the real base question is, what got you into horror?
Oh, for real?
Yes.
It's kind of an awesome story actually, because I was outside playing basketball with my cousins and my brothers, right? At my cousin's house. This was, who knows how old I was, like 9, right? Something like that, 10. And I don't know why to this day, I don't know why. But my uncle came outside at some point. We must have wound down playing or whatever. And he was like, "Hey, Josh, I want to show you something. I think that you'll like this." And I went into the living room with him, and he put on Twilight Zone, the movie. And it was the first time I ever saw... Yeah, I would say it was maybe I saw one before, that I just don't really remember or something. But it was I number it, I counted as the first horror movie I ever saw. And if you really think about that movie, do you guys know that movie, Twilight Zone, the movie?
My godfather, who is a indie actor in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts area, got me into it, and I loved it. I just remember that the guy's screaming, he's on the wing of the plane, and I'm like, that's fucking crazy.
Think about this, though, because it's an anthology horror movie.
Yeah.
There are 4 segments. There's also the wraparound, which is the scariest segment, which is Dan Aykroyd, and do you want to see something scary, all that. But the 4 segments sort of almost encapsulate, like, the range of horror. The first one is all social commentary, with Vic Morrow being the most racist lunatic in the world in the bar, and when he exits the bar, he's suddenly a Jew in Nazi Germany. And then when he gets killed there, he wakes up he's a black man in the South about to be hung. And then so he experiences the minority experience. That's the first segment. The second one is Spielberg doing like the heartstring horror, kick the can with Scatman Crothers, whatever. So already the variety is crazy. And when you're a kid, you think the Spielberg one's really cheesy, but the older you get, the more you're like, no, this one's great too. The third one is like the crown jewel, which is It's a Good Life, Joe Dante. It's the one where the kid could imagine anything. So he removed his sister's mouth. He makes Uncle Walt pull that rabbit out of the hat. He sends his other sister into a cartoon. He pretty much lives, he's a god that lives in like a cartoon, whatever he wants. So that was like Now you got the social commentary, heartstrings, the elasticity, anything goes, the imagination. And the fourth segment is the creature feature, which is the monster on the airplane. And so for a first movie, a first experience with horror, it was almost like I had been injected with an entire history, an entire like understanding, and like the entire scope on like right away.
That's a great way to put it. And that scene where the sister's mouth isn't there anymore, I remember that making me freaked out as a kid.
God, no kidding, right? I was like 10 years old and just playing basketball with my brothers, and all of a sudden I'm sitting here watching this, and I can still see the room. I can still see the whole setup, and me just thinking like, this is unbelievable, you know? And that was it. I was hooked. And there was I think I'm older than you guys, and there was like this thing called Saturday Shockers, where it was like every Saturday on one of the 6 stations that existed then, they would play horror movies. So then I started watching those and blah, blah, blah. But the uncle opening that door was huge.
Did he have a fascination with horror, or is it just a movie he liked?
You know, I don't know. Was it something? I know that he was a huge Doors fan, because when I got older, we talked about that, and I like the Doors. I think that he maybe was a big Stephen King fan. You know, this was probably 84 that I'm talking. I would have been like 9 or something. And so I think I think he was, but not like us. Not like, you know, us guys, you know, he doesn't know it like we do, but I think that who knows what was said outside? Maybe I said, I want to write short stories or something. Who knows, right? But what he was like, you got to see this. Sat me down, not my brothers, and he was right. I did have to see that, and I almost never even want to ask him, because we're not like very close with them these days. Not whatever, but we're just not. They live far away, and I saw one time I would like to ask him, like, why? What was that? Why? What did you see in me that you saw like a young horror fan?
I think that would be important for you to know, just as a person, because that's what your life is. That's what your success, how you are known throughout the world, literally, is through horror.
What if he was like, dude, it was your Cannibal Holocaust t-shirt.
That'll do it. That'll do it every time on a 9-year-old. Josh, that's such a cool answer, because I love, when we ask that question of a guest, usually the follow-up is, okay, so tell us, how that innate love of horror led to you kind of becoming a creative, but it kind of sounds like it almost went the other direction. You said, maybe one thing is, he saw that, want to write stories and figured this is the direction it might head. So has that always been something that you've been interested in?
In writing or the genre itself?
In telling stories in general.
Sorry, yes, 100. Yes, so it must be born from there, right? This meeting with him, because as a kid, I mean, I remember reading the first book that I read from beginning to end, and I did it in front of my family. I remember that being something that I'm still bizarrely proud of now, like the first book I ever read, like a chapter book, whatever it was. And then there was a thing called Pine Tree Books where I grew up, where it was a contest for which student in like the district could read the most books. And I used to roll through them, like Bunnicula, The Celery Stalks at Midnight, although The Holiday Inn, all that, like just go. And I always lost to these 2 or 3 girls every time. And I still feel like that way. When I see stuff online, I'm like, I've read 50 books. And then Sadie Hartman's like, I've read 100. And I'm like, I've been dealing with this since I was like 9. But anyway, so I early on, it was like read. And then that led to drawing comics that were not even stories necessarily, but trying to. And then that bled into a very sort of embarrassing emo poetry phase, which I think a lot of horror writers kind of go through that one, like, you know what? I'm going to be dark. And the way I'm going to be dark is to bare my soul, I'm going to just sort of I'm in right now. And then all of a sudden, and then stack of poems that are like, it's dark out and it's dark in, And I actually kind of like that line right now. That's a good way to start a story. And then that led to short stories that were like so obviously trying to have twists in them, and eventually to novels. So yes, the answer to that is yes. Is that it's always been there in some form or another.
That's awesome. Couple takeaways from that. First of all, I love your emo poet meets Quint from Jaws impression. Your now I'll probably get this wrong, but I think you said it was it the Pine Trees Book Club? Is that right?
Yeah.
It just, as soon as you started explaining that, all I could think of was, my version of that was the Book It program to earn your very own personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. And the amount of reading I did, I wish I could say it was because I had that love, but it was really just because I wanted pizza.
God, that sounds good right now. What if with every like 10 books we got like a personal pan pizza? That'd be awesome. Yeah.
That might push me to that 100.
Yeah, seriously.
That's how I feel about Brennan and me. Like me and him, we've gotten to the point in our friendship where we beta read each other's things. We beta read together other people's works, or we just read stories together. And I'm like, oh, hey, cool. I'm at like page 50. He goes, I'm 3 books in, so I've already read that a week ago.
Weird though, because it goes like, it's weird. It's like there's an ebb and flow to it. Where the first 6 months of this year, I was reading like 6, 7 a month. And then I just finished reading the first one of this month. But I am writing a book right now, but I also wrote 2 other books earlier this year. So there does seem to be like an ebb and flow to it where like suddenly you're just not reading as fast. And it's not always the fault of the book you're reading. Like maybe you went on a real bender, right? And you read like 3 in a week or something, right? And then the next one you pick up, it might suffer a little because you're a little strained or whatever. So it took me like 17 days to finish one book. All of a sudden.
I always wonder that, if how much the time in my life I'm coming across a book impacts my enjoyment of it. I wonder if there are books that I absolutely didn't connect with me, that had I read them a few months before or a few months later, they might. Or even on the flip side of that, a book I absolutely loved, something I might give 5 stars to, that just really hit me at the right point. And maybe I didn't love it as much as I think I did.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And that's sometimes the fear I have of rereading. A lot of people will be like, how many books have you reread in your life? And which ones do you regularly? I think I've only reread 2 books in my life. I read The Shining twice, once because I was a kid, and then once somewhat recently. And then I read a book by Faulkner, Absalom, I read twice. The first time when I was living in New York, and I was like, wow, this guy is a writer, and later on for the same reason. So I'm almost apprehensive to go back. Like, let it just be this magical moment. Let it be what it was. Maybe if I would do the opposite though, maybe for one that didn't work, I might try one of those again or something. But it seems legendary for me because the ones that don't work. Because if I've read, the last 300 books, honestly, guys, I probably didn't like 3 of them, like maybe 3 or 4. Where I turn to Allison, and I'm like, oh, this one. Like, it's like 1 out of 100 for me, where I'm just like, nah. To me, like horror novels, the worst horror novel is better than most scary movies that I see.
That's fair. I can absolutely get on board with that. And, that whole idea of, Patrick mentioned that, we are both fledgling writers, me more so than him, but at the same time, I kind of consider myself more of a reader/reviewer, and there's almost like this pressure to criticize, I suppose. But it's so damn hard because, if I do pick up 10 books, there is every freaking chance that I love 9 of them, and that 10th one's still pretty good.
Yeah, I know. And then, so the point that I got to, and this is where like I'll post something every now and then where I'm like, I read 40 books, 5 stars each. Fuck it, 200 stars all around. And to a lot of reviewers, that means, okay, well, I can't take his reviews seriously. But to me, it's like what happened was I got to the point where I am able to locate the impetus, the nugget, the spark, the reason the author wrote this book. I'm able to find it. I can almost, like if I'm reading a book, I can almost, that's it right there. And in almost every case, and I suppose I could just ask online, but I wish that person was sitting next to me at the bar or something, and I could say to them, did you start with this right here? Because like I can see this moment right here being like, oh man, I have an idea for a book, and it's about a guy who's this, and I can see it all blossom from there. And the second that I like locate the reason, the inspiration for writing a novel, I just enjoy it from there, because then I feel like I'm literally just experiencing someone that was inspired enough to tell this story. And like that's, it's meta in a way, right? Because you're not reviewing the book, you're reviewing the fact that the book was written. And sometimes, to me, the most interesting character, or almost always, the most interesting character with every book I read is the author. Like, as if I can imagine with every book I read, there's a piece of plexiglass, or it's written on plexiglass, and behind it, like Gemma Files is sitting here, but behind the plexiglass that I'm reading, Stephen Graham Jones is behind the plexiglass, and I'm thinking, oh, that's a good decision, and I look up at him, no, that's a good decision, yeah, that's a scary beat, and I look up at her, that was a good, and it almost feels like I'm getting to know through their judgments, through their decisions, not necessarily through vocabulary or language. It's not always that for me. It's more like rhythm, pacing, judgment, and especially the scares. Did you highlight it too much? Did you slip it in there? Where'd it come from? And that tells me like a lot about them. So a lot of the times, it's not that I'm reviewing the author, but it's more like I'm like glad they wrote it. And so for me, that's 5 stars. And I'll walk away from it.
Quick aside, did you get a chance to read Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones?
No, he sent it to me about a month before it just came out together, Malorie and that Nightworms, right? And I haven't yet, but I should. I have it. It's sitting right here. He emailed it to me a couple months before it came out, and I just didn't yet.
It just reminded me, first of all, because you mentioned him, but that definitely seems like one that would be fun to dissect. I think that would be right up your alley. Now, do you find that's ever your kind of methodology of looking at it? Is that ever a problem? Like you can't separate or it becomes distracting thinking too much about how it was written and not immersing yourself enough in the story? Or is it just that's the way you read?
I think that I think it's just the way I read. Like, I think that both things happen concurrently. I'm reading, a great one is Ghoul by Brian Keene. That's a great example because that book has some batshit elements in it, like that one kid's mom, and I'm fully inside the story in the graveyard and the mom and the everything going on. And I'm also thinking like Brian wrote this. Brian decided like this was. Some of that stuff, like he decided this is in my book. I'm going for it. I'm doing it. And I can see it happens concurrently. It's not just some like clinical analysis of an author. I'm totally invested, but I'm also like, I don't want to say in awe because that sounds almost like I'm bullshitting or something. It's more like I'm watching, my eye is on both the story and the author the whole time.
That's funny. I just read that one for the first time a few months ago, and I kind of like the way you put that. You're like, you could be in the middle of it and just be like, holy shit, he's going there. That he went there.
Yeah.
That's completely accurate.
I had to like reread some of that mom stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, am I getting the, wow, yeah, this is really happening. Okay. All right, Brian.
I got that. I don't know if you can see my pile right behind me. It's on the very top. And
yeah.
And Hollower by Mary San Giovanni's on there too.
Awesome.
So I would like to just pull back real quick because I wanted to say one thing. Michael David Wilson and your relationship's funny. Also, it's like you, him, Max Booth, and I forget the other guys, but it seems like it's kind of like I don't know how else to word this, for lack of a better phrase, a clubhouse. Not a boys club, but just like a club for fun writers. How do you feel about it? Because I know that there's a few more of you. Is it as fun as, because it sounds like you're having a blast with that.
Well, a lot of that, well, I mean, you can almost argue that Michael David Wilson is the hub of that whole thing. But eventually it became, so my manager's name is Ryan Lewis. And Ryan, his whole story is amazing, and me meeting him, that's all just like truly amazing, wonderful stuff. And at some point he was like, after Bird Box the movie, he was like, let's maybe start thinking about us as producers on everything from now on, not just shopping your books. So once we did that, and once we had Unbury Carol, Inspection, Black Mad Wheel, and a couple of short stories like Option, A House at the Bottom of a Lake, option, then we were like, okay, wow, we are able to do this. You and I as producers, now let's do this with other people's books. This is all Ryan's ideas, or he's the engine behind that side of things. And I'm like, okay, and that led to Max and Michael and Lindsay Barlow and Jonathan Jans and like a number of people that are kind of like, we're all like Ryan's weird kids now. like each one of us in our own way is like a total weirdo. And so, and Ryan is a very level-headed, intelligent, I don't want to say conservative because that's not the right word. Just he's a level-headed, super smart, steady dude. And he's surrounded, he has amassed a stable of lunatic horror authors. So I think that has enhanced the club atmosphere to it.
Is he around your age? Because I can never tell the way you guys talk about him.
Yeah, no, right. He sounds like he could be like this genius child or a really, like grizzled, brilliant veteran that like laced him up for one more round.
Yep.
Oh, I used to manage Kuntz in the old days. I'm gonna come out for one more, Malerman.
He goes back to Quince. I love it. So there's one more point I want to make because I do have something to thank you and Michael for, which is mentioning Glenn Parker from Does the Dog Die podcast. Because you mentioned me and him together, and then I thought, why haven't I talked to Glenn yet? Long story short, me and Brennan are scheduling him to come on our show next month.
Awesome.
Because of you guys. So
Awesome.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Brennan, do you have a question that you want to jump into? Because I know that we got probably the next one the same, but if you want to lead it, by all means.
Real quick, you mentioned that you kind of getting hooked up with Ryan Lewis. That was an interesting story. Tell us a little bit about that, how that came to be.
Okay, cool. I love actually telling this story. I'm glad. Thanks for asking. So I play in a band, and I've been trying to write forever. We left off at the emo poems leading to short stories. This led to failing at writing a novel for 10 years, and all I mean by failing is not finishing one. I don't care if one's bad, but finishing one, it means it's total success. I don't give a shit how bad it is. But for 10 years, I was unable to do that. I didn't know how to do it. I made it 300 pages in one, which is in this crate over there. And all I had to do was put the end on it, for crying out loud. I could have rushed the ending and been done with a book, but I just didn't know how. Age 29, I had a breakthrough. I finished one. That is now 33 books. It's been like 2-3 a year, something like that. So this was a major moment, and when I was about, I'm just trying to think, about 8 or 9 books deep. I had been posting every time I finished one, which was every like 4 to 6 months online. A friend of mine from high school called me. His name's Dave Simmer. He calls me up, and he's like, "Listen, you sound like you're writing a book a month right now. I don't know what's going on, but I know a lawyer who represents authors, and you want me to send him one of your books." And this was in the middle of being as broke as someone could be. I think the most I made was $10,000 in a 12-year stretch. I was wasted all the time, gloriously, with amazing people, like intentionally, wonderfully wasted all the time. We had a clubhouse bar and with the band and everything. It was just incredible. And I didn't know which book to give this guy. I already had Bird Box. I already had Carol. I already had Goblin. And I insanely, foolishly thought that a book of novellas, Goblin, would be a better option, because if they don't like the first one, maybe they'll like the second one. So I sent that, and he, I mean, you could see like me, like legitimately, like, that's the right strategy. Yep. Oh. 4, maybe number 5. So then he sends that to the lawyer, and I'm stoned out of my mind one night at this house I'm barely living at in Berkeley, Michigan. And it's this lawyer, and he was like, "Hi, my name's Wayne Alexander, and I would love to represent you. I read Goblin, and I think it's great, and I want to see what else you have." I was like, "Wait, what's going on? I'm in the band, I'm broke, a million books piling up, hadn't shopped them to anyone, not one agent, nothing yet." Wayne then says to me, "I have what I think is a perfect manager for you. And he's your age, and he's just, starting out in certain ways, and he's super smart and this and that." He sent Ryan Goblin. Ryan Goblin calls me. Hello.
Is that his nickname for now on?
Ryan
Goblin Lewis.
Goblin Lewis. Like throw the final inning in baseball. So Ryan called me like a month later, and he was like, "Hey, I would love to manage you." And at this point, I'm like, "What's going on? What am I, a lawyer, manager? There's like, what is there to manage? Like, I'm literally like returning cans every day. This being broke continues for years, but with Ryan now as a manager, because it's not like you get a manager and then the next day you have a book deal, right? So with Ryan, I rewrote Unmarried Carol, and we were all set to shop it, and I don't know what bug got in my head or what, but I was like, I think that it's dangerous to start with this one because it's a Western. And nobody had given me that advice. I just sensed that it could be a little dangerous to start with a Western. And I was like, I think we should start with this one, Bird Box, instead. It feels more like a debut, a more how do you do. It's a very small, very contained horror story. And he's like, all right, send me that one. So I sent it. He's like, great. I rewrote that for a while. He then shopped that to Kristen Nelson, the agent. She calls me. She wants to shop it to publishing houses. And at this point, Ryan says to me, the minute this gets picked up, I am going to sell the film rights to this book. And I had no reason to, like, he had no track record of this. None. I was his only novelist. He had sold, I think, some screenplays and had things optioned for clients or other people. But there was no real reason for me to totally, I was just like, and he's not like a mover shaker. It's not like he's like, dude, I'm gonna pull this off of you, kid, you know? Like, it's not like gold sunglasses and big hair or something. He's like just a level dude. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, I believe you, you know? And Bird Box, Kristen sold Bird Box to HarperCollins. This was, as you can imagine, an absolutely like mind-blowing moment for me. I didn't even know what was going on at this point. And then like 5 months later, Ryan sold Bird Box to Universal Studios. And at that point, I was like, holy shit, man. This guy, we've been together for like 3 years by then, working together. And I was like, he fucking did it. He's been doing this for years, and he freaking did it. And it was this incredible moment for both of us. First time he did it, and also like we just kind of had blind faith in each other from the start. He just saw a pile of rough drafts that he thought were really messy and really good for various reasons. And I saw a guy that didn't have any novelists, but had like this very focused, he's always concerned about the career arc over flash in the pan. He's always advising me not to follow trends, that he's always talking about how they're moving targets. You don't want to write a book for this audience because by the time it comes out, especially nowadays, by the time it comes out, that like 2 years ago, it feels like 1,000 years ago now. So don't aim for these things. Just, keep to the spirit of things. And we're constantly, I talked to him today twice. And so to me, Ryan, there's the friend that called from high school. He started the whole thing for me. But Ryan Lewis is like the one who like has like the steady guiding hand like through this whole really freaking fantastic experience.
You listen to your gut every time, and it paid off. And I think that's one thing that people should listen or take away from this episode, if anything were to stick out. For me, it's listen to your gut, because in my experience too, it's usually right.
It's like you can sense it, right?
Yeah.
It's just like when you're writing a book. Now let's go micro. So you're writing a book, and like at first you're like, I don't know how long this will be. But then like around 40,000 words or something, you're like, oh, actually, no, I can tell this is probably going to go around 80, 85. What do you mean? Like, I don't know exactly where it's ending, but you can start to sense the arc. You can start to sense the situation you're in, the story you're in. And again, this is interesting because this is in step with what we were talking about before. It's not just the story inside the book, it's the story of the author too. And if you pay attention, you can sense where that character, you, is in that arc as well. And I think that that's something that Ryan and I are very aware of, and we call it we always use the word momentum. And the whole idea is, if you stay in motion, you may not end up where you originally dreamed or planned or hoped to be, but you're going to fucking end up somewhere. And so stay in motion, and let's like, does this item that we're talking about, does this have momentum to it? Yes, let's go. Just, writing this next novel for no reason, but is there a momentum? Is there a spirit behind? Let's go. And we always side with momentum. Whether it's a friend of mine who made a short movie of one of my stories for like free, obviously, and then to Netflix, like a giant holy cow thing with Bird Box. To me, they're both the same. Like they're both moving forward. Let's go. And Ryan's the same way.
It's a great way to look at it. Along the lines of arcs, like and momentum. Just today, earlier today, I was talking to Brennan, and the book I'm working on is one that has been in my head for 13 years, and I'm bleeding on the page. And I knew the arc. I wrote it out. Laurel Hightower gave me some great advice on outlining, and that was helpful. And I'm like, okay, I know the arc, I know the motives, blah, blah, blah. And then I get to 30,000. I'm like, oh, this is Brennan. This is because, I tell him like all the updates, and I say, this is weird. I didn't see this coming. Now I hit 46,000 words today, and I'm like, this idea came. This is the arc. This is part of the core arc, but it's like, this is I like this. I like this a lot, and I feel like the more I listen to your interviews, the more, and I'm not just bullshitting you. Like I kind of get the Josh Malerman spirit animal thing going on because of your love for it. It doesn't seem to fade away ever, and it's fantastic. It's catchy. And real quick story. I had this uncle that departed a few years ago. Great guy. He would do something that you literally are the only person I've ever talked to online or in face-to-face situations where you do what he does. It's the same spirit and tone where he would come up to you no matter who you were. He would talk to you. He would listen, but he would actually listen. I'm not saying other friends don't listen. It's the way he does it. He was 110% like, I'm pumped for you. I don't care what you're talking about. I love it. You're the only person I've met, and I love it. And I think that's also why I'm like, I want to hear what you have to say. And you do that with your stories, the way you talk about them. I don't know, man. This is my long-winded way of saying I like what you got to do.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much, man. I think, God, this is an odd story to tell, but I'm just going to tell it. I don't know if I told this on This Is Horror. If I did, stop me or don't. But so when I'm in the band, the High Strung, and we, with my best friends, and we lived in New York for a minute, for 4 years. Actually saw the Twin Towers fall in person. We were there then. That's when we, in person. So watch that happen in person. All of us.
I never heard you say that before.
Yeah, that story is, woo, man. But anyway, so at some point, I'm like, in the studio space, it was just a basement that we had a recording gear in. And I remember I'm sitting there in front of this reel-to-reel machine, and there's drinking every night. There's drugs around everywhere, always. All of us were on them. Infinite new friends, old friends. We're totally broke. What's going on? We're starting a band. I'm trying to write books, blah, blah, blah. It's total mayhem. Broke. I'm stressing that because it really felt like that's all we were all the time. And I remember having a moment in the basement alone where I was like, look, whatever we're going to call this, writing, art, whatever it is, the spirit of it. I was like, you need to put this in a safe place in your head that is beyond distraction, that is beyond drinks, beyond drugs, beyond, we weren't really dating anyone in those days, but beyond trying to date people, beyond the shows, beyond any pressure you might feel. If you write one song that you think is really good, like don't feel pressure for the next one. It's in a safe spot no matter what happens. And that bizarre, it sounds a little cosmic, and it sounds a little new agey. But that moment where I said, look, this thing that you adore, we're putting it in, not in a stuffy little attic room. We're putting it somewhere safe, though, somewhere nice and safe, where nothing can get to it. And now fast forward all the way to, let's say, Malorie, right? Where Bird Box the movie was a big deal. And so Bird Box the book became a bestseller. And you can imagine sitting down to write a sequel, one might experience like enormous pressure, right? And just like everything the books have been safe from arguing with a girlfriend, safe from a bandmate like leaving the band, safe from total freaking broke poverty, safe from drugs, drinking, all these things. It's also safe from pressure. I didn't know this before because I've never had something like this before me, like Malorie. And I sat down to write it, and I was like, oh no, this is great, man. Like, I'm not even remotely worried. Let's roll. Let's just go. I wasn't like, oh no, this better be oh shit, man. You know. And the whole time I'm like, no, don't use that. You know. It's nothing like that at all. It was like just sat down and excitedly hung out with Malorie for 300 pages again, and now I'm a few books beyond that. So I think that the spirit of this, I think, is in a very safe place with me, meaning my spirit. That sounded like I had like a ghost with me. The spirit is in a safe place, gentlemen.
You talking about my uncle's spirit? That's why.
You guys want to see it. The spirit is in a very safe place. Down the hall, you know. I like that idea. That's a good story idea. Like, don't worry, it's fine. Everything's fine. Everything, just come follow me. Yeah, I don't know if I'm, you know. Anyway, it's in a very safe place with me. And at some point I started talking freely about that and haven't jinxed it yet.
I loved how I have loved, let's say, how, you know, the approach to Malorie was there, you know, through all interviews and processes and everything I've read and heard you talk about that book, there's just never been one instant where, you know, like you said, it seemed like you felt pressured. There was no Bird Box blew up, so no, I have to do this. And I, excuse me, I think that's huge, you know, because the book definitely reads like that. Like, this is not churned out because, oh, the movie blew up, now I have to do this. And that's not you. Just the way you approach any creative aspect, I you know, even if the studio's banging down your door saying, we want another, I can see you yelling at that closed door, being like, no, I'm working on this story about, you know, a ghost that's trapped safely down the hall. This is what I'm on right now. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like, how would you explain this? I have definitely said this before, that there's a way to like maintain a double think about this, where it's okay to think that the book you're working on has to be the greatest fucking thing ever, and at the same time think it's okay if it sucks and it's just a book. Don't worry about it. Like, and they don't cancel each other out. Both permanently exist. One, while you're writing it, like, this has to be good, and also it doesn't matter. It has to be good. It doesn't matter. And I think that it's okay. Certain scenarios, double think are fine, and that's one. Because a lot of people, you know, I have friends that have brilliant ideas for books that don't do them because they get stuck on a street name sometimes. I'm not even... I was trying to, like, I was thinking maybe I could, like, allude to James Joyce here, but then I was like, maybe I should allude to, I'm like, dude, name it Main Street, let's roll. You know, let's call it Placeholder Street, and we'll worry about this later, you know? And I think that that's anything to get you through that rough draft, because once the draft is done, then you can fix it. But if it's not done, man, it's just gonna lurk and lurk and lurk and haunt you.
Yeah, no, this is such a small detail to get hung up on, but I absolutely agree with that. You know, if I need to name a street, or if I need to name a restaurant or something, I feel like 9 times out of 10, I just throw an extremely generic name at it. And I have read, you know, I like a cute little reference every now and then, but I read a book pretty recently where it was, I remember I'm feeling like the only reason this paragraph exists was so they could put in, you know, cute street names, and it's distracting. It almost kind of just pulls you out of the story.
Yeah.
And as a result, I mean, I feel like I try to not overdo that. And there was definitely a more, my train of thought left the station. There was definitely a more important question I had than, do you like naming streets after buddies? But
ask him what got you into horror. Just joking.
What if I was just like, right, you guys would be so, you'd be in your own little horror movie if you just said that. I go, well, I'll tell you. So I was playing basketball with my brother. And then, like, just totally, and then you realize, like, wait a minute, he's like on a loop right now. And then you see me come in through his back door right there, that door behind him, and like stab him while he's like listening to me tell the same exact story.
Have you seen Host?
I did, yeah. I thought it was great. Did you guys like it?
Yeah, we talked to Haley, Emma, and one of the screenwriters last week, and I told them, I'm like, that one part where Carolyn's she's in the background just on loop.
That's brilliant.
That's what I was thinking about. Like, when's his face gonna smash in the screen?
Yeah, totally brilliant. That whole sequence, you knew the first time they showed that's when that comes up again, it's going to be totally freaky, you know? Because you're like, you were going to see her enter again, and it's going to be the screensaver or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot to love about that one, man, for sure.
How cool is that? Like, they did something that probably will never happen again in our lifetime. A movie shot during a pandemic.
God, I hope so. Or I hope not, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, you want to hear a kind of similar story, but not really? Is
yes.
of my band. This is such a great story. So this is 1998 or 97 even. 90. It must be 98.
I was 8 then.
And the drummer of our band, he owned a video dubbing house. This is a VHS dubbing house in New York City, right by Union Square. And so I worked there as a counter guy. And Derek owned the place because Derek had worked there. The owner died. Derek got a loan with 2 other girls. They ended up buying the place. So the reason this place is amazing is that, like, you know, a lot of actors in New York would come in there before they were famous, right? So they're real. Here's a real, like, Steve Buscemi, like Femke Janssen, like these people would bring in before anyone knew them. And then Derek would, or different guy at first, but now then Derek would have, like, it was like 30 VCRs set up with all the blank tapes in. You put in the master tape. They all record at the same time, right? And then when they come, they pick up their videos. They mail them out to whatever it is, companies, studios, whatever. Derek had someone bring in a movie this is 98, where he didn't know it was a movie. Where they were like, I just need 30 copies of this. Derek puts it in, and it's the fucking Blair Witch Project. So this is before the internet, like, storm of it. This is way before any idea that this was, like, fake, you know? So talk about the ultimate way to watch the Blair Witch Project. Derek Burke, the High Strung, is in the back room of a video dubbing house because you have to watch the whole thing to make sure that it's fine.
Yeah.
And he just sits there and watches what he believes to be, or pretty much believes to be, like, footage that somebody edited together of these people's cameras. He walked out of there at the end of that and he was like, listen, somebody brought in a video that, like, you really have to see, man. And I was it's like these kids, they're like looking for like a witch myth, and it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I always, whenever, like, Paranormal Activity and now host, because I host, like, seem to have broken another barrier, another, like, you know, wall or something.
For the internet, for the social media age.
Yeah, definitely. And the Blair Witch Project, like, absolutely destroyed a wall for all of us in 98. And nobody saw it in a cooler way than Derek did, man.
That I can't think of one other cool way. Did he think it was real and said, holy shit, we got to get help?
My memory is, because think about it, I hadn't heard about it yet. It isn't what it is now, you know, not even close. Well, nobody knew. He seemed like freaked out. Like this is freaky. And he's like, I think it's like documentary footage that someone brought in. He's like, and it's really weird. It, like, tells, like, a story. And, you know, I remember being like, oh yeah, whatever. Where are we going?
Yeah. I can imagine, because, I mean, like, you know, we would think now, if we stumbled across something like that, just because it's become so commonplace. But like you said, you know, the found footage genre, it's not that it didn't exist, but it definitely wasn't as prevalent before Blair Witch. So it's not necessarily something your mind would jump to. That's crazy. That's awesome.
So then and this led up to, like, one of the best cinematic experiences of my life, because then later on, then word started to spread about this thing and the website for it and all this. I went and saw that movie alone, meaning by myself. There's other people there. Went and saw that alone at midnight at the Angelica, which is, like, a famous New York theater. And I watched it at midnight, and it was, like, one of the greatest cinematic experiences of my entire life. I remember calling friends on a payphone after. This was so good. This is like 99 or something, right? Calling, like, all these friends, like, it was unbelievable. Oh my God, it's still one of my favorite movies. And I know, like, a lot of it gets a lot of shit. I don't know, probably because if you watch it again, it seems, like, kind of repetitive, where they're just kind of yelling at each other for, like, an hour and a half. time, believe me, dude, and there's like no blood in that movie, and at the time that was astonishing for a horror movie. There was only one little bit of blood in like a handkerchief with like a tooth or something in it.
Yeah.
It's a scary movie.
And
paranormal.
paranormal.
I was 14 when that came out. I was prime Blair Witch in the theater age, and I will tell you, I haven't watched that movie in probably 15 years, but the ending when it pans to the kid facing the corner is never, ever, ever going to leave the back of my mind. That shot and that whole sequence is etched in my memory forever.
Yeah,
It's creepy. Paranormal Activity, when I watched that when it first came out, it just sent chills. That Host did the same thing for me because I got a rare moment where my mother-in-law had my kid, my wife was at work, I had the house to myself, and I watched it, and watching Host, and I was creeped out, man, with quite a few of those moments. And with Paranormal Activity, I remember the flower scene where they you see the footsteps of the person standing next to the bed.
I saw that movie stoned with a bunch of friends. Saw it in the theater. We knew it was obviously found footage by then, right? We all knew, but
yeah.
But I was high to my mind, and my friends the whole time. I'm like, I remember I had a hoodie on, and then I was like this, like sucked up into the hoodie, like the whole time. That movie fucked me up, man. And afterwards, I said to my friends, like, oh God, that was like, and they're like, that movie was dumb. I'm like, what? Like nobody else got from it what I got from it. They're all like, no, let's go to the bar. And I'm like, what? No, really? I slept with the lights on for weeks after that, man. For that very scene, the footprint powder scene, and then I had a friend, a girl who was like, you know what I like to? She goes, you know what I think? I think that when it walks in on those footprints, it's so big that it has to like duck in the bedroom, the entity.
My God.
Oh, wow. But I was like, that gives a whole other perspective to that movie. I watched it again recently, and it was genius. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. A great movie to watch stoned from my personal experience is really any Marvel movie, but one of the Avenger movies, I can't remember which one, but it's just fun. Watching all this crazy shit happen. I mean, there's no blood, there's no horror, but still, it's a fun time.
Sometimes I would imagine in that state that they're pretty much all the same.
Well, sometimes horror can be a little dangerous on that kind of thing. Not like you're gonna walk out of there stabbing people. Listen, Reefer Madness, man. If you put on Friday the 13th, you're guaranteed to go to jail. But it's like, it's you walk out of there like disturbed, because you're like I watched Dr. Sleep stoned, and I walked out of there just feeling like super weird. I love that movie, and I walked out feeling like like super strange.
There's some scenes in there that I think because I watched it completely straight-laced. There's some scenes in there that I don't know that I would want to put myself through in an altered state of mind.
Yeah, like horror, like Evil Dead, that shit works. It's fun, and there's like a underlying of just pure adrenaline fun in some of those. But there are some horror movies like I don't want to watch like the Exorcism of Emily Rose. I don't want to be stoned for that. No way, dude.
Josh, let's jump real quick to one question that I got specifically about a High Strung. How did The Luck You Got, your single, end up being the theme song for Shameless?
Okay, so we had, with our first album, we had signed with like a woman who worked for a company where their whole job was to shop songs to film and TV for commercials, blah, 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 whatever. And I think we signed with her in like 03 or 02. Her name's Mara.
Mm-hmm.
And all through the years, she would tell us, like, I'm going to get you guys, same thing with Ryan Lewis, man. I'm going to get you guys a placement one day. I'm going to get you a placement. And she loved that particular song. And then I think it must have been 09? Like 2009, so 6 years later, something like that. We were practicing. I think it was maybe 2010. We were practicing, and she called Derek's phone right after practice. He had just left. And she called him up and was like, I got you guys a theme song for a show on Showtime. I pitched you guys like a while ago, and they want to do it. And we're like, what? And, again, there was like, we all quit our jobs in 01. and we hit the road like full time. So we didn't have apartments, we didn't have income, that was it. We lived on the road for about 6.5 years. And I started writing novels in that stretch and all that stuff. So to get a phone call at the kind of the tail end of that stretch, saying that like, here's some money coming in, here's placement where people might actually hear your songs. And we were playing for like 20 people a night. We still do. So the luck you got was like a big, huge moment for us, man, you know? And it was that woman, Mara, just like Ryan has done with the books.
That's awesome, man. Because that's like, I'm a fan of that show. Have you ever met William H. Macy?
No, we went to LA to play a gig for like, that was kind of billed like we would be playing for the crew and like the Warner Brothers, like the Saxon crew and stuff. And it was a really fun time. We were in LA, and I remember we all got really drunk for the show, and it was a super fun night. But none of the cast were there, so no, I've never met any of them.
He'd be an interesting one to talk to, and you could talk to him about Jurassic Park 3, Brennan's favorite Jurassic Park of the series.
Is that anyone's favorite Jurassic Park of the series?
I thought I'd get that comment from you. Why don't you take over, sir?
So, Josh, has the High Strung had the same lineup since, I think you said like 97, 98?
Well, that's when we moved to New York, was well, Derek was already there, but me and Mark moved then. But it wasn't until 2000 that we officially started, when another friend of ours from Michigan, Chad, moved there. So in 2000, me, Derek, and Chad. Derek plays drums, Chad plays bass. We have been there the entire time. We started with two other guys, Mark and Burko. Burko quit after a couple years, and Mark left the band in like 05, 04. It must have been 04. But then in 2016, he came back. And Mark and I have written, we've written hundreds of songs together. But he just, whatever, he went his own way for a while. It wasn't like acrimonious or terrible or anything. It was weird because we all lived down the road and all this. But then when Mark left, it was 04. Because Mark left, we suddenly had a month open. Because we had to learn songs without him and stuff, right? And we came back to Michigan, to this area, and I took that month to try another stab at writing a novel, and that's the first one I ever wrote. So in a weird way, I think that Mark leaving sort of like severed like some chord where him and I were songwriting partners, and it was kind of like you're on your own now. And then suddenly I finished writing like my first novel like a month later or something. So I think that maybe him and I both were just growing, whatever. Years later, 12 years later, Mark has rejoined, and somewhere along the line, Steven joined the band in like 2010. So we are now 5 again. Started as 5, went down to 3 for a long time, 5 again.
I'm super curious in your songwriting process with collaborative versus solo. What's the difference for you?
Well, I kind of equate it to like what happened with Bird Box, the book, and the movie. Now, why I say this is that it's kind of like, I feel like I write the song, but I don't I'm never in a million years would tell Chad or Derek what to play, you know? Or like this, Mark and I talk about harmonies or this or that, of course. But it's not like I'd be like, Derek, you got to do this. 4 on the floor, you know? It's more like I just bring the song and they do what they want. And the Bird Box felt the same way. I wrote the song, the book, and then the band, the movie people did whatever they wanted with it. And I like that kind of thing. I don't, it's not that we only have so much time, but I like energy-wise, I want to put all my energy into just writing the songs and books. So to spend like all this time, looking over someone's shoulder or telling them you should do it this way or making sure it's right. Oh, just go do it. And let's just hope it's freaking awesome. So that's the same philosophy with the songs. Having Mark as a songwriting partner is huge though, because he's like really good with lyrics, really good. And that's an awesome thing to have because, you get stuck, man. You get stuck on the lyrics. Sometimes you have like a sweet melody and chord changes, and then you're like, oh my God, all these lyrics are so cheesy or whatever. And he's really good in that way. So having him has been almost like a safety net in a lot of ways, in a lot of great ways. He's amazing. Oh, he writes songs on his own too, and he's fucking amazing.
I think that's so cool the way it almost kind of lines up with your writing philosophy, where you just kind of hit it from that creative approach, and it allows you to just write a book and then go on to the next book. And if somebody else can kind of take the reins on marketing, on principally anyways worrying about the film side, it really just allows you to create. So I mean, where as far as songs go, you can put in the vocal line, you can put in this or that, and as long and just let everybody else do their thing to put the complete product, and then you're on to the next. And I think I read that you have something like 24 albums out. Is that right?
Well, probably is, but then like I think there's 9 with the High Strung. Mark and I did 2 alone while he was out of the band. He like came into town and we recorded twice. I've done a couple on my own. So, yeah, it's probably somewhere around there. And so there's like a crate with 24 other novels, and there's also probably close to 20 like albums out there too. Yeah.
Good Lord.
So he's literally prolific at nearly everything he does.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the definition of it. Speaking of prolifics, how would one go about joining that club?
Well, it's something that's been on my mind a lot. I wrote about it at the end of Malorie in the afterword. It really is something that's been on my mind a lot because I think that there's a long period where I was almost like embarrassed of it, which is a strange thing to say, but you don't know when you start if you're going to be prolific. Nobody sets out like, I'm going to write 100 songs a year, or I'm going to write 3 books a year. You're just like so excited that you're even writing one. Mm-hmm. And then, see, here's the thing. You don't know you're a prolific. It's not book 1, might not even be book 2, but it at least has to at least be book 2, right? Because then you see the space between 2 works of art, right? So Wendy was the first book that I wrote. I have it right here for good luck. My brother went and made a paperback. My brother owns a print shop. He went and made a paperback when I sent him like the file to read. This is from 2004. I went to his house. Look, Josh Malerman's Wendy. That's like John Carpenter's Wendy.
For audio listeners, it is a paperback. There's nothing written on the spine or cover or back. It's pretty neat. It's like a notebook.
This was the first time I ever saw something of mine like in book form. This was like early 05, because I sent him. I wrote it in December of 04. So early 05, he came over to my house during winter, Michigan, hands me this. He's like, hey, I made something for you. And I was like, oh, holy shit. And I like held on to this thing for like ever, and I still have it here.
That's
amazing.
It
wasn't till book 2, Goblin, that I realized like, oh, so that was only a year between these two. It was, no. It was 6 months. 6 months. 6 months later, I wrote Goblin. So at that point, you start to sense something. And I had already written a lot of songs by then. And then when book 3 comes 6 months later, now you're starting to see a pattern. And then, you get 10 books deep, or now at 33 books deep, it would almost feel like astonishing if the whole year went by without one. So I don't think you set out to do it, but I think once you set it, it's like there can be, depending on who you're surrounded by, there can be almost like, it can be frowned upon by a more like literary set, which I know a lot of people like that. And where it can be a little bit more like, well, if you're writing that much, it's kind of just typing, isn't it? Or like you can't care that much about each book if you're writing like a year. My God, man. I even had an editor who was telling me that I should take 5 years to write this one novel. It's like 5 fucking years. Yeah, I'm gonna be that dude. 12 novels done in the next 5 years. And he was like, no, just like take your time. It doesn't have to be done like now. And I was like, Kristen, this is not the right editor for me. And not in a pissy way, in a like, no, we need like, let's go. And Del Rey, Trisha is like, more at that speed also. So
absolutely.
But there was this period of like, I even remember at a party or two, like downplaying how much I had written. Because you would say the number like 33 to someone, and it almost sounds like, well, what does each one of those matter or something? But if 2, then said someone, ooh, what are they about? 33, they're like, what the fuck? I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. And at some point, I realized a lot of my heroes, Hitchcock, King, I mean, just a lot, tons of them, were prolifics also. And I realized, like, hey, man, it's okay. Like, not only is it even okay, like embrace this. It's okay to love all of them and to give your all to all of them and all these things. So there was almost like a shame of it for a while. And just recently, I've totally come to embrace it again. And that's why I wrote about it in Malorie.
That's pretty amazing. I actually have a selfish question because I've heard you talk about something where you said once a book is complete, it's awesome. It's something to be happy about. Now, does that mean when you write the first draft, or does that mean through the whole process you wrote it and then it's in the hands of the editor or publisher?
Where the first draft, yeah, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's like you did it. You got 300 pages that you can always fix at any pace you want to fix them at. And even if you fixed it wrong, like you could go back and fix that. Like, but to get to that first fucking spot, to have the stack, like it's a story, like the ending sucks. The lead character's name changes halfway through. It is. Wait, oh shit! I forgot he has a sister, right? All that shit, like don't none of that shit matters, man. You'll clean all that up later. So to me, it's like, yeah, with the end of each one of them, and then sometimes I worry, but I know this is foolish, but. Okay, let's take Carpenter's Farm, the book that I just did. I did like a live serialization of. Let's say that Del Rey was like, we want to put this out in hardcover or something. I would have like a bizarre moment of a conflict, right? Because I love the spirit of that thing, but all I did was write it, check it, post it. Like, can it be rewritten and be a lot better? Fuck yeah. Normally a book goes through like 10 rewrites or something. Would I take the time to do that with that one? Or do you let it be the spiritual thing it was? I say let's just let it be what it was. And that's a perfect example of what we're talking about right now, because can it be better? Yeah. But it's a snapshot of a moment in time. It's a snapshot of your spirit, a moment in time. I'm always for spirit over vocabulary, mood over style. The rhythm over, references. Like I'm always like almost like Carpenter's Farm feels now like a live album to me. Yeah, we can go in and double track the lead voice, like the Dead and Bowie, the Grateful Dead, the Dead and Bowie like would do that kind of stuff, and then it's awesome. Or we can just kind of be like, this is our live fucking album, and Carpenter's Farm is my live album. Just let it be that.
I love that. I love the spirit over all those things too, man. Because that's kind of what makes all the authors different from each other. It makes a story different.
And then also, if you like read certain authors where it's like just like, oh shit, like Nabokov, Fitzgerald, where the writing is just so smooth, it almost feels like you're watching them swim or something. Like, and it's like, and I don't know how to explain it. Like, in their case, even in their cases, like The Beautiful and Damned, even that book, I'm like, yeah, it's all right. The writing is like off the fucking charts good, but the book's all right. And then I could equate that in music to like, a guy that like can shred or something, but so what? But the guy that shreds, or maybe even like Neil Young, his solos are choppy and small, but there's just so much there, and you can feel that shit.
Yeah, you can feel. I love Neil Young. You and I have talked about this before. Ozzy and Neil Young are two guys that you and I love. You can feel everything about them in their live stuff. I like their studio stuff more, but I mean, there is something different about the live recordings. I just to kind of piggyback off of something we were talking about the first book. I remember mine. It was 2013. Is when I met my wife. She was the one that got me back into, hey, I do love reading, because school kind of beat into me that maybe I'm not smart enough or I don't get it. But then I met my wife. She's like, you like this? And I'm like, I do like reading, which got me into writing. And I remember finishing that, wrote it in 2 or 3 months, 80-something thousand. I'm like, this is a big deal. It feels cool.
Oh, yeah, man. That's life-changing shit, because if you can do it once, you can do it again. And even if you only did it once, like, what a thing to have the rest of your life that you wrote this 87,000-word book.
Now, I got something. Normally, I would save a question like this for off the air, but it might apply to someone that's listening, so I'm just going to ask it while we're recording. For me, I've written, I told this to Brendan recently. I feel nuts for saying this, but I've written like 10 books now, but they're all only the first draft because I never returned them. And Brendan goes, "You made so basically you wrote a few 100,000 words and you never literally ever went back to them." I'm like, "No, I got more stories to write." Like what?
Same. There's books in that crate, dude, that
Yeah.
I have not looked at since I wrote it. Like, I'm trying to think of one to match what you're saying. Oh, great one. There's one called Bring Me the Map. Okay. That is 160,000 words. It's a beast, and it's in this crate. There's 2 crates over here actually, and I wrote it right after Bird Box, so that should be significant to me, in my life. What did I do right after, And I haven't read it since the day I finished writing that rough draft. I haven't opened that book. It could be like the most problematic, like, oh fuck, that like can of worms in the world, or it could be like I have like a total gem in there and I have no idea.
So that's what I wanted to ask you because I really don't know the definition of prolific, and I think you're someone that would know it. And again, this is a selfish question, but I've written 10 novels, 3, 4 novellas, over 30 short stories. Pretty much nothing's published. Most of them are first drafts in a period of 7 years.
Oh.
Is that considered?
Yes. Are you kidding me? Yes.
Because I got like nothing published, so I'm like, what the fuck am I doing wrong?
It's interesting. No, dude. I told you, by the time Bird Box came out, I had written, I think, 14 novels. And Bird Box is my first one to come out. So, and I know that Kerouac had something like 10, 12. I think Stephen King had like a bunch. Maybe the Bachman books were before Carrie. Were they?
I know he had 4 or 5. Because
Yeah. So then, okay. So, I mean, to me, it's like, okay. When Bird Box came out, I went and gave like I had introduced myself and the book to like a room full of media at the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this was freaking horrifying, right? I've never had a book out before. I'm supposed to get up with this giant poster of Bird Box, the book cover behind me, in front of USA, People, New York Times, all this stuff. I didn't even know what was going on. I told you for all those years and all this. But the point was there were 3 authors that day. There were me, a woman, Laline Paul, and then this other guy, Smith Henderson. And Smith took 10 years to write his novel, okay? And I remember thinking right before we both went on that I had, in that same 10 years, I had written like 14, mine wasn't 10 years. I had written like, whatever it was. By 2014, I had written, it's about 2 years. So I must have been like, like 20 novels or something by 2014. So it was this unbelievable realization to me that I had written, for 10 years, and he was just, and we met up at the same exact spot, both being introduced to the same group of people as debut authors. And that was really a profound thing to me, that I realized like it was in the flesh, like it does, that there's no one way to do it. It's just in the flesh. Like, I mean, I'm literally seeing a guy who fucking spent 10 years on one novel. I'm a lunatic firing. Sometimes it feels at random, most of the time not. And here we are, in the same exact moment in time, both of us with our first book being published. So to me, yes, you're just a natural prolific. I count, a demo of a song. Yeah, I wrote that song. A rough draft. Yeah, of course I wrote that book. Is it the best book it could be? No. Might that rough draft suck? It might. But we can fix it.
That's true, and I just I appreciate you answering that because it always bugged me that I got and I'm never like, oh man, fuck my friend. I'm always happy for my friends. In my head though, I'm like, I keep getting rejections, and it motivates me to write more and more. But I'm just like, I'm chomping at the bit, man. I'm like, the next one's gotta be it. The one I'm working on is gotta be it. So
one thing I've discovered in music and writing is that anytime I start to feel like, oh, I can't fucking play this chord, or I can't, like, all my songs sound the same, or writing. Anytime I get to that moment of like, this is so frustrating, I'm like, you're on the cusp of like a quantum leap. You're on the cusp of being able to do something you haven't done on the guitar before, or you're about to write like the best thing you've ever written so far. And like because like these moments, they're not easy. When you're between age 13 and 19, they're easy because you're developing so fast and so much and vast. But when you get to a certain age, like how much are you really quote unquote developing, right? So by putting in all the work that you're doing, that I'm doing, and that we're all like a lot of us are doing, you also have to get better. But it's not as apparent as when you just start playing or start writing, when you get exponentially better every time. So anytime I run into that moment you're talking about, that sort of frustrated, like, fuck, that's like you're right on the cusp of a breakthrough.
I hit that today because again, going back to older part of the conversation for the story I'm working on, and I told Brennan, I'm like, I'm stuck. I'm bleeding to the page, but like I can't. I keep writing every day, but my goal is 2,000 words, but I'm only doing 1,000 or whatever. And I feel like I'm beating myself up. So I think this is relatable to other writers because we tend to set goals for ourselves. And if we don't hit them, we're just kicking our own ass. Do you do that to yourself?
Yeah, but then like I've tried different things too. I tried Unmarried Carol. I wrote 5,300 a day. That was nuts.
5,300 a day for how many days?
15 days.
How many you cut out? How many?
15. Unmarried Carol was written in just over 2 weeks, but then
good lord,
monstrous. But the rough draft, God, it was just like couldn't stop. I absolutely loved it. Then I tried recently because I've heard of numerous authors that write 500, 300, like Hemingway, 500, 300 a day. So I was like, I'm going to only write 500 words a day. And that was so freaking grueling, man. It was grueling. It would take me like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm done already. And I'm done. But that's the point of this one. And later, if the writing's better. Of course, I haven't read it since. But it's like, we'll see later if it's better. And then I wrote a beast of one, 300,000, that I did 1,000 a day because I was aware.
Whoa.
I was aware that this was a marathon and that there was no way that I was going to reach the end if I came out gunning, like swinging 4 or 5 a day. No fucking way. The one I'm doing now has been like about 2 a day. But yes, to answer your question, we all beat ourselves up like, oh, I said I was going to do 1,000, I only did 500. I think any writing is that's good. Whether it's 300, 500, 5,000, 1 page, 10, it doesn't matter. It's good.
I think everybody's journey is different too, and I keep coming back to the example you laid out where maybe you had 14 books and you were putting out your debut published novel versus somebody who spent 10 years on it. And to me, not to take away anything from that person, because that's how they write. That's their process. But to relate it back to music, it's if you're writing different books, that's how you're working on your craft. You're working by just continuing to put words down on the page, continuing to learn how to tell a story. That's like, working on your scales, working on your techniques, and working on different chords and voicings and all that stuff versus getting really fucking good at one song. And at the end of the day, if you work on all the technical aspects, you're going to be a better writer. Again, I know some people are the way they work is they're gonna write their first draft and then they're gonna go back and they're gonna learn stuff based on reworking their own writing. And, of course, that's not to say you won't learn anything learning one song, but you'll learn, my opinion is you'll learn more working on the foundational stuff.
Well, yes, I know what you mean, and that's why like I almost don't even care. It's hard to explain. I guess what I'm trying to say is that what I love is the body of work in the end. What I love is the canon. Ooh. I love the variation of all these things, and it's also less pressure on you as a prolific if you've written numerous books because there's less. You feel less like a single book has to express you completely. If I was only writing one book, I would be like, oh shit, well he better eat Raisin Bran because I like that better than Rice Krispies. you write if you've written 30-cent novels, you could start writing books where nobody in the character relates to you at all, and that's cool. Like you don't feel this need I need to express myself. Well, I need to. This is what I mean to say. You don't feel like this book has to represent me in full. Whereas if you only wrote one, you might feel that way. But Smith Henderson, I saw a really funny tweet the day or maybe it was 6 months after that meeting with that guy, or when we did that thing together, where he tweeted, "Does anybody have an idea for a second book?" And I was like, oh God, this guy's about to start 10 more years, But I mean,
sounds exhausting.
Langan took 10 years with The Fisherman, he told me. So it's and that's a masterpiece, man.
So Laurel took 10 for Whispers in the Dark.
Really?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a consecutive 10 years, but she said, I think she said 9. Whatever the case. Well, you know what? My favorite trilogy, because I fucking hate the first one, the Hannibal Lecter series. Thomas Harris, man, he's got Black Sunday from the late 70s, the Hannibal Lecter series. I don't like Hannibal Rising, but that's why I say the trilogy. But he's got one more out that just came out this year. So what's that that's 6 books.
What's the first one?
Black Sunday. Is
it awesome?
I actually haven't read that yet because that's around the time that I started getting into the indie horror scene, and I just got lost in those books.
I read Red Dragon recently, and it was holy shit, good.
If I were to say I have one favorite horror book, that's it. I like that more than Silence of the Lambs.
Blew my lid, man. And Silence of the Lambs blew my lid too. But Red Dragon was woof.
Dollarhide is the creepiest character I've read to date.
So good, man. And that dude, what an interesting dude, because he didn't do an interview like we're doing right now. He didn't do one. I think the last one he did was for Red Dragon. Meaning he didn't do an interview for the book of Silence of the Lambs coming out, or when the movie was one of the greatest movies of all time, he didn't do an interview. And then he just did one recently.
You can't find practically nothing. And his character is going to be more famous than probably most of us are ever even going to come close to.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's I want to be Black Sunday, though. What's that? So that's Hannibal also?
No, Black Sunday was about... okay, so there was a terrorist attack in the Olympics for...
Oh, yeah.
So this one is about a terrorist attack during a Super Bowl game. Hannibal Lecter I don't think was supposed to be a main character. It just caught on.
Yeah.
But
in fact, in a weird way, Silence of the Lambs almost in a strange way can feel like he wrote Red Dragon again. Because, it's still it's the same thing. They go to Hannibal for advice, and there's the killer on the loose and blah blah blah. And I remember when I was reading, I was like, wow, this is not a first draft. It's almost like how Evil Dead 1 and 2, you could argue, are the same story but totally done differently.
Holy shit, I've never thought of it like that.
It's not technically a rewriting, but it's also, I don't know if I'm going to call it a sequel. Yeah, it's a different version of it. I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, okay. Let me write the time down.
Okay.
You mind if I go P2 there, Josh?
Let me write the time down. I'd like to keep track of these things. What time do you pee normally, Josh?
No.
10:25.
I edit the episode, so I'm time stamping it.
I will send you the next time I go too. Once you'll get I'll send you an asterisk next time I go piss. It'll be 1 a.m. All right, hold on.
Josh pees at 1 o'clock.